Hi, my friends. Welcome to Inside the Minds of Authors. I'm DC Gomez, your host, and also an indie author. I'm thrilled you're joining me today for another fun interview with a passionate author. We're going to kick off this show with an exciting reading, so let's get started.
Hello, Inside the Minds of Authors podcast listeners. This is writer J.T. Morse, and I'll be opening today's episode with a couple of short pieces of mine on the theme of sisterhood. The first is Sisters of Stones, and it was published in 2018 by Spider Road Press in the bonus section of the historical fiction novel Companion of the Ash by Kate Spitzmiller. Sisters of the Stones. Come, men of Jaffa, collect your stones. The painted Jezebel will pay for her crimes. As Esau the elder drags me to the clearing by the well and flings me into the red dirt, every fiber of my being pleads. Don't let them see a hint of weakness. No tears, not a drop, Jocelyn. With a surge of strength, I rise to my feet and raise my gaze to meet those of my accusers. I know them. I've been with most of the townsmen standing before me intimately. That doesn't seem to matter in this moment. They begin gathering handfuls of grit, chunks of limestone, and jagged shale rock. The first stone hits me in the back of the head. I refuse to reach up and soothe the throbbing wound. My fists remain clenched at my sides as I pivot to seek out the hypocrite. Marcus? A mixture of sorrow, fear, and confusion reverberate in those dark coffee-colored pools, eyes I know so well. If I'd not been given to Samson to wed so young, Marcus would have paid my father's dowry. But he didn't return in time to stake his claim and save me. His stare now falls to the parched earth that he, I'm sure, wishes would swallow him whole. Why, Marcus? I know why. Permission granted with his initial strike, the maddening crowd releases a torrent of guilt-laden malice upon me. Despite my best efforts not to react, my henna-decorated arms fly up. Pain shoots through me again and again, causing my naked body to curl in on itself. Knees buckle and I crumple to the ground. I watch as blood flows from lip, cheek, and forehead. The dark liquid pours into a crack of Mother Earth's broken skin. The tears try to come, but I bite them back. They will not defeat me, not for a crime they thrust upon my kind. I didn't want this life, this eternal role of shame. No. For the sake of every girl who will face their injustice after I'm dead, I will not let them win, not a single tear. Pressing my bloody hands into the dirt, I muster what defiance is left in me. Crawling on all fours, I press up. Lifting my face, I smirk as if to say, I've taken all you've forced on me for these many years. I can take this. Seeming unable to suffer such defiance at the hands of a woman, the red-faced Esau runs at me, slamming a rock the size of an overripe pomegranate into the side of my head. Nausea overwhelms and my vision blurs. I see the orange-red sand coming up to meet me, then all falls dark and silent. Prying an eye open, the brightness overwhelms. Although my vision is hampered, I can smell blood. I can taste blood. I can feel blood trickling down my temples. As my eyes adjust, I see diminutive, delicate feet clad in leather sandals, with silvery bells on ankles and golden rings on toes. The scents of cardamom, cinnamon, and chrysanthemum swirl in the air. My tears come to the surface again. This time, I don't hold them back. I let them come. Let them spill forth in a relentless flood of wonder and anguish, fear and astonishment. A cool shadow covers my fallen body, and a gentle hand strokes the battered flesh of my back with a damp, soothing cloth. I lift my weary head. A circle of women surrounds me. They're facing outward with stones in their hands, held at the defensive ready. Some are my kinswomen and lifelong friends. Others are those I would deem my enemies, women who know what I do, know what I have done with their husbands, what I've done to survive, but refuse to do any longer. These women, all of them, now stand as my protectors, my saviors, my rescuers. They are my hope, my beloved sisters of stone. For this and for the futures of our daughters and our daughters' daughters, I cry out. I am woman. I am sister. I am Jocelyn, and I am no longer man's painted Jezebel. For the second piece I want to read today, it is a creative nonfiction, so kind of memoir-esque piece called Climb, Baby Sister, Climb. And it was published as well in 2018 in the I Am Strength, True Stories of Everyday Superwomen anthology from Blind Faith Books. Climb, Baby Sister, Climb. As I sat in the stark, fluorescently lit waiting area in a white, hard plastic chair, tears gathered in the corners of my eyes. I couldn't understand how this had happened and why to my baby sister. Would she be okay? And if she wasn't, would I be okay? Startling me, a voice brought the loudspeaker above my head crackling to life. A monotone staff worker announced that visitors could now approach the windows. Attempting to stand, I chastised myself for being weak. She needed me, now more than ever. Get up and go to the window. Calling on the strength of our grandmothers, great-grandmothers, and all the women that had endured this life before me, I willed my legs to stand. They eventually, but reluctantly, did, and I made my way to window number 12. Though I tried to appear stoic and brave, tears flowed down my cheeks, my heart pounded in a hollow chest, and my stomach churned like the gray, frothing ocean after a tsunami. Almost close enough to touch, yet so far away I could see her on the other side of the glass. Pale, with puffy eyes and matted hair, lips trembled, both hers and mine. Why couldn't I save her from this fate, from this cruel reality of life? I wanted to blame someone, anyone, but the truth was, there was no one and everyone to blame. The room went dark as my vision narrowed. Snippets of our family flashed in my mind. Our parents' marriage, unhappy and unstable. Mom cycling between bouts of emotional volatility and moments of exemplary maternity. Dad in the shed attempting to hold onto his sanity and questioning where he'd gone wrong. Me, the control freak firstborn, making desperate attempts to fix everything, but just making the situation worse. Standing before her, palms on the glass between us, I grasped at invisible threads of connection. I stared into her deep hazel eyes as they begged for a salvation that wasn't mine to give. I pleaded with God, the universe, any deity or being listening. I love her so much. Please protect her. Help her endure this trial, or better yet, let me take her place. I offer my life for hers. Please, I'll pay the price. On the day they opened the gates and released my baby sister from the shackles and orange jumpsuit, I cried. Tears of joy that she'd worked so hard to claim the status clean and sober. Tears of relief that she'd survived being locked up and had paid her debt to society. And tears of concern for the days ahead, the unknown. The best I could do was hope and pray, vowing to stay her unconditionally loving cheerleader of a big sister. Climb, baby sister, climb. Climb up from rock bottom where you've landed. Big sister is here waiting for you just on the other side. Climb, baby sister, climb.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Inside the Minds of Authors. We have the amazing JT Morse with us today, and those pieces were incredible. And everybody probably says, DC, you said this all the time, but it is such an amazing thrill to have authors with us and to actually have you guys reading. By the way, your voice is enchanting. You had the first one, you had me crying. I was like, why am I crying? What is going on here? what is this moment? So your voice, your words, everything connected, and it's such a powerful piece. And the fact that you're talking about Jezebel, I have never saw the world through her eyes. That is amazing. Let's start with the beginning. Where did this come from? How did you come up with this story? What did you do? Just fill us in. You have me. What's going on?
Okay, well, the first thing to know is I was an actress, singer, dancer, actress, theater work for 20 plus years before becoming a writer. character building and becoming characters is what I do. It's what I've been trained to do. And so I think that's definitely something I enjoy and have brought with me from my acting career to my writing career. And so my favorite parts of writing fiction is literally becoming the character. I mean, I want to be as much in their shoes, in their body, in their heart, in their mind as I can when I write as them. And so first person is my main love because assuming a character, it works best if you speak from then a position of I and first person. This particular piece came to me, I don't remember exactly when the idea sparked, but I was working for Spider Road Press as an editorial consultant and doing some work out of their office. It's a small boutique feminist press. And so it's very much focused on women's rights and on equality for women. And so I started thinking about the history of feminism and the history of women. Ended up landing in this time, biblical Roman, kind of time frame was as far back as my brain would kind of let me conceive. And so I got to thinking, okay, what would it be like to be a woman in that time? And even more than that, what would it be like to be a marginalized or disenfranchised woman, even more so than just the fact that she's a woman? Yeah, so then Jocelyn came to me, this painted Jezebel, this woman who, due to no fault of her own, due to marital circumstances and whatnot, she ends up kind of being forced into a life of prostitution in order to survive. And so that's kind of where she came from. And as I got to know her, we formed a just incredible bond. And then for literally months, I couldn't stop thinking about her and wanting to tell her story. That's kind of how Sisters of the Stones came about.
It is such an interesting ending because for anybody who knows the history, especially if you'll go back to Old Testament, the crime for most women is stone and it's death. So to have such an interesting twist, the fact that she's looking at these women who I'm like, okay, I know you're my enemy, but you're still here. How did you decide for that ending?
As much as I see the pain and the injustice in our world, I am still in my heart an eternal optimist. And it's all about hope and joy for me. And so I knew that she would find herself in this situation. In my mind, my options were she either needs to save herself or she needs to be saved. But if she's going to be saved, I want her to be saved by other women, by having these women of the community stand up for her, and step up to protect her. Is the likelihood that this kind of situation ever really happened in history possible? I mean, anything is possible, but it's very unlikely. I mean, in our world today, we see it. That scarcity mentality of, I need to get mine. And if they're competing with me, if there's another person, woman or not, compete, then, I can't help them, or I can't be in collusion or collaboration with them. For her, the answer was just instant for me the women of the community are going to step up and save her. That's the optimist in me said, no, needs to happen. So.
Well, it's interesting because we were never going to know, because sometimes history is written by the winners. So if we live in those worlds where you have societal based on very gender or whatever that time frame, even the story, if it happened, you're not going to hear it. It's going to be washed down because we don't want to instigate that kind of mindset across the board, so we can't talk about it. But to have a piece that is so powerful and is so short, to give you so much emotions from one side to the other, because you're going, oh wow, like didn't see that coming, because you're listening to her words and you're like, okay, what's happening? And when you finally realize, oh my God, you're getting stoned, it takes you to a whole different dimension. So I love what you created in the character. And yes, the actor in you comes out because you can see yourself in that point, and you brought it to life. I was like, yep, that comes very natural. Your second piece, very personal, very powerful. When did you decide I'm going to tell about myself? Like, how did that happen? Because that's huge, like such an incredible and fearless moment. When did you decide to do that?
That piece, or a version of that piece, was actually one of the first things I ever submitted once I started my writing career. I'd been successful with magazine articles. That's where I started as a writer. My husband and I moved to a 18-acre ranch in the middle of the same Houston National Forest, about 90 minutes northeast of Houston. And I'd been an actress in Houston for years. And when we moved out there, I knew it was going to be too hard to continue my acting career because driving in for rehearsal, I was going to essentially have to get an apartment in the city if I wanted to continue that. So I said, nope, I need a career shift. And what is a career that will still facilitate my creativity and use that creative muscle that I love and that is so important to me, but that I can do from anywhere? And so writing, my father was a journalist and newspaper editor for years. So writing has always kind of been in my blood and come naturally. And so I said, yeah, let's shift to writing. So I kicked off the career with magazine article writing. Why? Because they're short, they're quick, and they pay. So that was my criteria. Depending who you're writing for, there's definitely a harness or a halter or a constrictions on your creativity because you need to speak to that magazine's audience. It needs to be very tailored to that group of people that magazine is being read by. So I realized very quickly, okay, this is paying the bills. This is getting my writing work out there. This is building my writing, editing muscles, but it's not fulfilling me. It's not the creative work I want to do. And so I saw Wild Sound Festival had a literary track to it contest for creative nonfiction short pieces. I think the maximum was, 750 words or something like that. And so I said, okay, well, I'm going to write something. And my sister and I are very close, but it's taken us many, many years to get that way, mostly because we've had such divergent paths since childhood. And so she went through a phase in her life that she is okay for me to share with the world, and that she was a crystal meth producer and dealer and user. Due to that, landed herself in jail. So that time in my life, it was such a crazy time when I was living in Europe and dancing with dance companies and eating in cafes in Paris and doing all these amazing things. And my sister was sitting in a Kentucky prison. It's definitely one of those pivotal moments in my life that I draw on often, that it would draw on during my acting career very often for when I needed to go somewhere deep, where the deep hurt was, where that core wound was. That was definitely somewhere that I would draw from. So when I sat down to write a piece, that was kind of what came to mind. And I asked myself, can I put myself back in that place of going to see Jen at the jail for the first time? I'd really like to explore what that felt like for me and go back there. And so I did. So that's how Climb Baby Sister Climb came about. And I ended up winning that writing contest. Later, Blind Faith Books asked for a slightly tweaked version, but essentially the same, but slightly tweaked version of it for their I Am Strength Women's Anthology. That's kind of the history of that piece.
I like how you bring everything together. Like your life has all these different paths and nothing is wasted. I think sometimes people assume that some experience we can't talk about, some things we can't share, some things is off limits. You bring this all together and you bring this amazing collaboration. Did you ever envision being able to do that?
Not in the way that I have. I mean, I've always been I'm a very open book. I'm a very open person. I mean, of course I have my secrets like everybody does, but being in the creative arts, you're automatically assuming a level of vulnerability. For me, there's a little piece of me in every character I ever played on a stage. It kind of came naturally for me that the same would be true of my writing. Sometimes to the detriment of my writing. I had a magazine once an editor asked me to write a piece about porches. And I said, oh, okay, great. I'm going to write this piece about porches. And so I wrote this incredible piece about the porch being the soul of the house. It is the open arms where all of the people of the community come together and where old men play chess and little children swing and grandma does her snap peas. And it was very heartfelt. And the note back from the editor said, Jody, I really wanted you to talk about if you should use clay pots versus painted pots or where to hang the flag on the porch. So
That's not the same.
No, not at all. I had to completely, she said, this is beautiful and it is moving and it is not what needs to go in our house and home section of Texas Living magazine,
I can
And
see
so it
that. I
has,
was like,
so that was a funny instance where it actually bit me in the butt that I like to put so much of myself into things. But more recently, I've been working on a fictional novel about three women who discovered that their spouses are serial killers, how they process, how each one of them discover, first how they discover it, then how they process it, and then what they do about this fact. About 2/3 of the way through this novel, and it started with a writing partner, critique partner, to start going through it. This partner said to me, "It's great, it's fantastic, but there's something missing here. There's something you're not connecting." About that same time, I have a therapist. I've been seeing her, goodness sakes, for 16 years now, on and off for 16 years. At the same time I was meeting with her, we discovered a very core issue for me that I really needed to deal with, that I needed to dig up in order to move on, to get past it, having to do with my sexuality and sex and that whole realm. Pretty much this critique partner and I and my therapist, the three of us, kind of all decided you need to put the fiction aside for a minute and focus on more a memoir style book of telling your truth. Because if you don't, whether you publish it or not is regardless. But if you don't, then you're going to still be stuck because you can't get past that in order to tell the story of these three women, which had sexual issues and repercussions in it. And so that's what I did. So I put the novel aside and I started working on this memoir called Dalliances, in which I pretty much trace my sexual history from my first kiss at 6 years old all the way up. I'm on the last 5 or 6 chapters of that now. It's definitely going to be a published. Which comes out first, the novel or the memoir? I don't know. I've been a fan of Elizabeth Gilbert for many, many years, and her path and mine tend to follow, and that she started in magazine writing. Then she did some short story work. Then she did a memoir, Eat, Pray, Love, that of course took off. And then she started writing her fictional, long fiction novels. And so my gut instinct tells me I'm going to continue to follow her path, and this memoir is probably going to come out before anything, before my fictional book-length fictional work does. But we'll see.
I love your answers, and your background filters so well through your life. So the fact that you're doing a memoir, I'm like, I love the idea, but I'll be terrified to do it. I'm like, yeah, I don't think I can do that. I don't think this little girl is ready for all that. So baby steps. So the fact that you're doing, I'm like, I so admire that. That is amazing.
I think it comes from the first book I ever fell in love, the first book to ever move me to tears. I think I was 8 or 9 years old when at my grandmother's house, I found a copy of Angel Unaware by Dale Evans Rogers. When I go back and read it now, it has a lot of religion, but the crux of the story is that they had a daughter who died at the age of like 2. She had mental and physical disabilities when she was born. And in order to deal with the loss of her daughter, Dale wrote a book from her daughter's perspective as an angel who has gone back to heaven and is reporting to God about her family on earth. And it's a tiny little book. It's teeny tiny, and sometimes it can be hard to find, but I bawled and I read that book probably 3 times through within that first year of having discovered it at my grandmother's house. And so I think that's where the autofiction, fiction that's based on someone's real story, and memoir, personal essay, nonfiction really came to be for me. And so for my, reading as a young person, all I wanted were biographies, autobiographies, memoirs. That's all I read I didn't read, I read some fiction. Of course, I had to read some fiction for school and various things, but it wasn't my first love. My first love was real life stories. Tell me who you are and how you are and why you are. And so I think that stuck with me. So it just kind of makes sense that, yeah.
You do it really well, and it comes across really well. So I can see that passion translating into your writing. Because, your climb, baby, climb, sister, that piece is so personal, and yet you could be anybody. The fact that anybody can connect and anybody can put themselves in their shoes works so well. I was like, yes, this is an art and a craft at the same time. And not many people can do it well. Like, memoirs are very tricky because they either come across as very preachy, or you're going, it's kind of dry. Like, how do you connect emotions to that genre? So you do that really
Sure.
well.
Thank you. Thank you. I think for me, you use the keyword connection. That is my word. In fact, I have a tattoo on my left wrist that says junctus, which junctus is Latin for adjoined or connected. That's my key to everything. The question I ask myself is this something that will connect me to myself, connect me to a higher power, connect me to other people, or is this something that's going to sever a connection? So if I say this, if I do this, if I write this, is it going to tear down walls or is it going to build bridges? What's going to happen here? And so I think that's pivotal for me as a writer. The whole reason I write is to connect. And so if what I'm writing isn't connecting to myself and hopefully connecting, with the potential to connect to readers, then why am I doing it?
You have such a powerful focus and you understand what your success is. You know what I mean? Success is very specific to you. This is what the mission for my books are. This is what the missions for my words. And everything you do is focused towards that. That is impressive, by the way. I am amazed.
Oh. Well, thank you. I'm very lucky. I'm very blessed. Whoever the muse, the great with all, the universe, the whatever planted that seed in me, I'm very grateful that it's there and that I get to hopefully reap the benefits.
I think so. Do you have a target audience when you're writing?
I have so much published poetry and in creative nonfiction and of course magazine work, and then fictional. I've got quite a few flash fiction pieces out there and short fiction, short stories published. But I don't think I have really a target audience other than you can definitely see a through thread in all of my work, even like the horror stories I've written and had published and things like that. Women and women's issues are in there. I think I've only written one or maybe two male protagonists, male main characters in anything I've ever written. And even in those stories, it was still a tale about women and how women are treated. So I would definitely say a more female or female adjacent audience. Adult or more mature people. I don't write a ton of profanity or sex. Most of the work that I've had published and that I'm currently working on wouldn't necessarily not be for children, but it's definitely for a more mature audience. Wants to go deeper, that wants to explore concepts, situations that are tough. I don't think anything I've ever written anybody would ever say is like an easy beach read, or like something to escape into. Rather, for me, writing and reading, rather than being about escaping, is about digging deep and going deeper and exploring those hard subjects and social circumstances and cultural issues.
That is actually really beautiful because I am totally the opposite. I'm all about escapism. Like I'm all about let's have fun and let's blow some stuff up. So they have, I'm all about the other side. I was like, let's go have some fun.
I love that too. Your Constantine, the cat stories are fantastic. I think we all need escapism sometimes. So I love that all of us have our different purposes to writing and our different realms that we write in, so that we have a huge, diverse, literal and figurative library to choose from. So on the days that somebody needs something light and fluffy and funny, pull DC stuff. It's fantastic. And on a day when you're feeling a little more introspective and need to deal with some stuff, find JT Morse's stuff. I love that we can all come to the table with whatever it is we enjoy and are blessed with writing.
It's probably the beautiful thing about writers is that we can all come to the table and have a different flavor for everything. And the purpose is still to give something to your readers and do it in a way that they feel fulfilled. And there's so much of it. So how do you get your ideas? Where do they come from? Because they're all over the place. Do you have are you walking down the street and like, oh, what's that all about? How does your writing process start? Let's go with that.
One of the workshops that I teach to groups often is called Bleep You Writer's Block. And it's basically a workshop of improv. I did, comedy improv performance work for many years. And it's basically using those tools I learned there, but applying it to writing. For me, stories are literally everywhere. Everywhere. So I don't struggle with finding the stories, my biggest hurdle is whittling it down and figuring out which story, which project, which idea to work with at a time, and then having to say to another story idea or piece idea, you're going to have to wait. I'm going to put you over here in the ideas folder, and I promise when I can, I'm going to get to you, but I have to focus on, so similar with the fiction novel, and I had to put it aside to work on this memoir project, and I don't know, DC, where they come from other than just me being open and being aware and alert and watching for the stories and grabbing them when they hit me. I just wrote a poem the other day from the perspective of the wife of a police officer who has killed a suspect. That was hitting me really hard. And to look at the periphery, to look at the people on all of these issues that have been going on in our world recently, the people on the sidelines, so to speak, and how affected those people are, that I sat and wrote a persona poem from her perspective of my husband, killed a man today. How would I process that? What would be going through my head? And so for me, inspiration strikes 50,000 times a day. So it's just a matter of deciding this is something that is important enough to me. And my physical body is really good about telling me that. If I hear something or see something and I literally double over in pain or my chest seizes up, okay, this is something I need to address for myself as well as for audiences and for readers. They really come from all over the place.
You have such a connection with your work and you're so intuitive about it, which is really exciting because you're able to pick it up and just go with it. How long does it take you to actually go from an idea to a finished product?
It is all over the place, girl. So that poem, particular poem called By His Hands, literally I woke up in the morning with just a tearing in my gut of pain for all of the people involved in all of these situations. So I couldn't function for the day until I got it out. So literally I sat down, it took me 10 minutes to write. I wrote it in 10 minutes and then I spent probably another 10 minutes cleaning it up. And then for me, it was such an important piece that I didn't want to wait to submit it to journals or anthologies. And so I just stuck that baby up on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, because for me, it was a message that I needed to put out, and I needed to share the empathy and the consideration for the other people involved in this situation. So in that case, it was wham, bam, that sucker, was out there. Other times, the novel, it's called Three Killers, Three Wives, and that one has taken me, I'd say I've been working on that one about 8 months, when I then put it aside to work on this memoir project. And I've been working on this memoir project now for hardcore for about 3 months now. Yeah, I think it's kind of all over the place. Climb, Baby Sister, Climb, the first iteration of it, again, was like 15 minutes for me to churn that baby out. And then some rewrites before it got submitted to the contest. And the piece for Companion of the Ash, Sisters of the Stones, that one percolated for longer. I needed to be with her for longer before I actually put her words down on the page. I needed to sit with her. So I probably percolated that one for, I don't know, maybe a month, and then actually started writing the words. And then it was finished and submitted to Spiderwood Press, I'd say about a month later. So maybe 2 months on that little piece. It's a 1,000-word piece, but it took me about 2 months on that one. So it all varies. Magazine articles I can churn out in 24 hours. Give me a day to get the research done and throw that article together, or go do that interview and get it on the page, and they're out. So yeah, so it's kind of all over the place for me.
You have such a wealth of knowledge and you're so passionate, which is really exciting because you're going, oh wow, you have as much passion as a magazine article as you do for your own personal stuff, which is really fun to see. What advice would you give an up-and-coming writer? What would you tell them? Because you have knowledge from all different places. What would you say to them?
What do you want to say? That's my question. In anything that I write, the questions that I consider are, what am I saying with this book, with this poem, with this character, with this sentence, with this word? What am I saying? And is that what I'm trying to say? Examine your motivation for what you're putting into the world. I have an editing client that's working on his first science fiction novel. And as we started working together, I realized and pointed out to him that every time he introduced a female character, he introduced them as beautiful, statuesque, model-esque, flowing black hair. It was all about their physical attributes. And every time he introduced a male character, they were brave and stoic, well-seasoned, and wise beyond his years. And I said to this writer, do you realize what you're saying by describing these characters in this way? And he had no idea. He didn't realize the misogynistic, very machismo masculine message that he was putting out. And so number one, I would say to writers, what are you trying to say? Is your work saying that? And then the second caveat to that would be always have a second set of eyes on your work before it goes anywhere. Even that short little piece about the cop's wife, I had a second set of eyes, somebody else look over it right quick, because oftentimes we're so, at least I get so connected to the piece that I miss things because I'm so focused on one idea or feeling that I miss a particular word maybe I've used that is sexist or is racist or is whatever, just because and it's not because I meant to be sexist or racist, it was just, I didn't notice it. And so having a second set of eyes to help you really get an unbiased look at what you're putting on the page and what you're putting into the world, I think is super important as well. Whether that's an editor, a critique partner, a beta reader, somebody else to give your piece and your work a second look just to make sure that what you're trying to say is what you're actually saying to the best of your ability. Every reader is different. Every reader is going to take a different message from what they read based on their own opinions and their own background. But to the best of your ability, are you saying what you mean to say?
That's a great advice. I think a lot of the times we write with so much passion. Sometimes we want to be quick about it that we take for granted somebody's going to read those words. Is it what you're trying to say that they're going to get, at least to the best that you can? Because everybody comes with their own story to the page. Once they pick up the book, it's going to be their story, regardless of what you're trying to say. So, but at least you gave it the effort. So awesome. I'm so excited. So are you ready for our lightning round?
Dun, dun, dun.
Of course. Okay. You're the first person that has ever said that. So I'm so excited. Nobody ever says that. They're like, oh God, what are we doing? So
we got this.
Short, sweet, first thing that comes to your mind, the kind of fun. Okay. Let's go with it. So ready?
Okay, let's go.
Hiking or camping?
Ooh, hiking.
Okay.
I live in a national forest and I hike with the dog, typically 3 miles almost every day. So.
Coke or Pepsi?
Neither. I don't do carbonated beverages.
Okay.
Back in the days when I did drink soda, Coke would have been preferred to Pepsi, but now neither.
What is your drink of choice?
Tea. I'm a tea girl. Water. Yeah, those are predominantly hot tea, cold tea, water, pretty much what I exist on.
That works.
Smoothies. I make myself lots of smoothies. fruit and veggie smoothies.
Sounds about my life. You just described my drinking status. I was like, yeah, that's about right. Now we're going to go for a little tricky one. So let's see what we do here. If you could pick any animated character that could fit your personality, what would you pick?
Do you remember is it Disney or Pixar? I think it was Disney movie Brave. So Queen Eleanor is the mom in that movie. I relate to her so much because she's trying to balance feminism and giving her daughter the freedom to be the woman she wants to be, and her patriarchal husband who she loves dearly as well and knows is a product of his culture and his upbringing and knows he has a good heart. But she's the bridge between these two and doing her best to keep it all together. And she ends up in the movie being transformed by a witch, by a potion pie into a bear. And my family, my daughter calls me Mama Bear. That's our thing. And so she lives life as a bear for a little while, before becoming back into a woman. But Queen Eleanor from Brave. I know this is an obscure side character. She's not a main character, but she plays such a pivotal role in the lives of both her daughter and her husband and her community, and in getting her community to view women and women's roles in society in a different way.
I'm so amazed and not surprised at the same time. I was like, if you would have picked any character, I was like, I can totally see that. I'm not even surprised you picked her. I was like, yeah, that actually fits.
Yeah, plus I think it's Emma Thompson who does her voice, who I love dearly.
Yes.
So yeah, that helps too.
Okay, so let's try this one. If you could have one superpower, what would it be?
Empathy. Total empathy. To me, empathy is a superpower. Being able to put yourself in somebody else's shoes, being able to see things from somebody else's perspective. That's the superpower that to me will change the world, and that will change everything about human culture and society and life. Hands down, without even any question. I will forego X-ray vision and flying and all the other wonderful, wonderful superpowers out there for the power of empathy.
I'm telling you, every time I want to be surprised, but I'm not. I was like, that is absolutely amazing. I never would have thought about it. So I joked that my superpower is being persistent, but I'm like, empathy's pretty impressive. Smooth. So here's your last one. Let's see what we get here. Because now I'm just like, this could go anywhere. What is your favorite place to hide and create?
My garden balcony. So one of the things that sold me on this property when we bought it is there's this big, beautiful balcony off of the master bedroom. So we're in the national forest, so it's surrounded completely by pine trees. So you feel like you're in a tree house. And I took this just big, open, blank concrete and wrought iron balcony and turned it into a garden. It is full of vegetables and herbs and flowers and trees. My mission has always been I go to nurseries like Home Depot, Lowe's, whatnot, and go to their garden section. There will always be like a clearance where it's plants that are on the verge of dying. And so I'm a plant rescuer. And so I always buy up those dying plants and bring them home with me and nurse them back to life. And that is my sanctuary. That is my solace. That is the place when I don't care how hot it is. I've got big, beautiful umbrellas out there to create shade for both the plants and for myself. And it's so quiet. And I mean, there's birds and there's nature and whatnot, but there aren't a lot of people noises out there. And to go sit in all the smells with all the flowers and herbs and tomato plants are one of my favorite smells in the world. And those wafting over, it's where I meditate. It's where I get lost. And it's my favorite place to write as well, because it's just, I'm in a whole other world.
I love it. I was like, I'm kind of jealous. I have a nice little porch. Granted, I'm still in East Texas. I was like, yeah, we're going to fry.
And sometimes I do fry out there. Sometimes I get out there and I can sit out there for about 10 minutes and then I'm like, nope, okay, that was enough for today. So.
Absolutely. So tell us, Madam, where can our listeners find you? Where are you available? Where can they get your works? Tell us about it.
My website is JTMorse, MORSE, writer, WRITER.com. So JTMorseWriter.com. On social medias, on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, I am at JTMorseWriter. I try to keep it as simple as possible, just everything the same across the board. So,
sounds like a plan. Like it. Well, Madam, it has been such a pleasure to have you. I'm so excited we got to spend some time, got to talk to you. Has been a blast. Thank you so much for joining us. Anything you want to tell our listeners?
Support DC Gomez and podcasts like this. I am a podcast junkie through and through. And so I'm always looking for podcasts that are quality, podcasts that are produced well and that flow well, just like a good book. They've got to have good pacing and good rhythm and good connection. And I feel like you're fantastic at that, DC. I feel like you welcome in your guests with open arms and you ask questions that are tough questions, but that also can be easy. You leave the door open for ease or depth. And so I really love that about you and about this podcast. And I just want to see it flourish and take off and listeners to subscribe. So thank
Oh,
you for what you're doing.
thank you so much. It's probably one of my greatest joys. And every
Mhm.
time I finish an interview, I'm probably more inspired than anybody else because I'm like, it is such a gift to spend some time with amazing people that do passion and you guys do it so well and you love it.
Mhm.
You don't get
Yep.
to see that a lot. So I'm like, aw. So thank you. And to our listeners, thank you so much for joining us in another episode of Inside the Minds of Authors. Stay tuned for next week. We have another amazing author. Thank you, everyone.